The emergency signal reached every corner of the galaxy at the same time. It came from the Keepers, ancient beings who had watched over galactic civilization for over 10,000 years. No one had ever seen a Keeper in person, but their guidance had prevented wars and helped species grow beyond their home planets. When the Keepers spoke, everyone listened. The message was simple and terrifying. The Devourers return. All must flee or perish. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, watching as representatives from hundreds of species received the news. The Etherians, tall beings of pure energy, flickered with fear. The Caraxians, proud warriors who had never backed down from any fight, were already planning their escape routes. Even the synthetics, machines that calculated every possibility, were discussing evacuation procedures. The last time the Devourers came was 50,000 years ago, announced Keeper Voice Zenth, the Council's oldest member. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. They consumed 12 entire spiral arms of the galaxy. Billions of worlds, trillions of lives. Nothing could stop them. The holographic display in the center of the hall showed images that made Sarah's stomach turn. Empty space where star systems used to be, planets torn apart and consumed. Entire civilizations erased as if they had never existed. "How long do we have?" asked General Vorth of the Caraxian Empire. "Our calculations show they will reach the outer rim in 6 months," replied the synthetic delegate. "Full galactic penetration within 2 years." The hall erupted in panic. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly began discussing shared evacuation plans. The Etherians offered to carry refugees in their energy forms. The Caraxians promised protection for those who could not defend themselves. Everyone was planning to run. "What about the younger species?" asked someone from the crowd. "The ones who don't have deep space capability?" "We will assist all who wish to flee," declared Zenth. "This is not about politics or old grudges. This is about survival." Sarah felt all eyes turn toward her. Humanity was one of the newest members of the Galactic Council. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Compared to species that had been exploring space for millennia, humans were still children. "Ambassador Chen," Zenth said gently, "your species will need significant assistance to evacuate. We are prepared to offer transport ships and guidance to safe zones beyond the galactic rim." Sarah looked around the hall. Every face showed the same expression, pity mixed with determination to help the poor humans who couldn't save themselves. It reminded her of stories her grandmother used to tell about Earth's old wars, when stronger nations would try to rescue weaker ones. "Thank you for the generous offer," Sarah said, standing up slowly. Her voice carried clearly through the vast hall. "But humanity respectfully declines." The silence that followed was so complete that Sarah could hear her own heartbeat. Then the hall exploded with noise. Delegates jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. The universal translator struggled to keep up. "You cannot be serious," cried the Etherian representative. "This is madness," growled a Caraxian general. "The probability of human survival is 0.0001%, stated the synthetic delegate with mechanical precision. Zenth raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador Chen, perhaps you misunderstood. The Devourers cannot be fought. They cannot be reasoned with. They simply consume everything in their path." Sarah smiled, though it felt strange to smile while discussing the end of everything. "I understand perfectly," Keeper Voice Zenth. "You're telling us to run because staying means certain death." "Yes," Zenth said, confusion clear in his voice. "Then you don't understand humans very well," Sarah replied. "We've faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, world wars, asteroid impacts. Every time someone told us to give up. Every time we said no." She activated her personal display, showing images from Earth's history. Humans standing against overwhelming odds, soldiers holding impossible positions, civilians refusing to abandon their homes even as disasters approached. When the great volcano threatened Pompeii, some Romans fled, but others stayed to help their neighbors. When the Titanic was sinking, some people gave up their lifeboats to save others. When alien warships first arrived at Earth during the Caraxian invasion, our governments could have surrendered immediately. Instead, they fought with everything they had. General Vorth shifted uncomfortably. The Caraxians had expected an easy conquest of Earth, but humans had made them pay for every mile of ground. During our darkest war, when half our cities were burning and our enemies seemed unstoppable, one of our leaders said something that became famous. We shall never surrender. Not we might not surrender or we probably won't surrender. Never. That's the human way. Sarah paused, looking around the hall. You see the Devourers as an unstoppable force. We see them as just another bully that needs to be taught a lesson. But the mathematical probabilities, began the synthetic delegate. Math is useful, Sarah interrupted. But math said humans couldn't fly until we built airplanes. Math said we couldn't reach the stars until we built starships. Math said we couldn't stand against the Caraxian Empire until we sent them running back to their homeworlds. This time General Vorth actually laughed, a deep rumbling sound. The human speaks truth. My people learned not to underestimate human stubbornness. This is different, Zenth insisted. The Devourers are not a conventional enemy. They are a force of nature like a black hole or a supernova. Then we'll fight nature itself if we have to, Sarah said firmly. Humans have been doing that since we first picked up sticks to defend ourselves from bigger predators. She touched a control on her display, and a new image appeared. Earth as seen from space, blue and green and beautiful. That's our home. Our children live there. Our history is written in its soil. Our future is planted in its ground. You're asking us to abandon everything that makes us human. The hall was quiet again, but this time it was thoughtful rather than shocked. We appreciate that other species want to help us, Sarah continued. We're grateful for the offer of transport and shelter. But running away isn't who we are. We'd rather die as humans than live as refugees. Zenth stepped forward, his ancient face showing something that might have been respect. And if your resistance fails? If humanity perishes? Sarah's smile became fierce, reminding everyone present why humans had earned a reputation as dangerous neighbors. Then the Devourers will know they were in a fight. And maybe, just maybe, we'll hurt them enough that they think twice before attacking the next galaxy. The session ended without any formal votes or declarations. One by one, the delegates filed out to begin their species evacuation preparations. Some stopped to speak quietly with Sarah, offering last-minute chances to change her mind. She politely declined each offer. As the hall emptied, General Vorth approached her. The massive Caraxian warrior looked down at the small human ambassador with something that might have been admiration. My people have a saying, he said in his deep voice. The biggest fire is lit by the smallest spark. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means, Vorth replied, that sometimes the smallest and weakest can do what the largest and strongest cannot. We will remember Earth when we reach the safe zones. We'll try to give you something worth remembering, Sarah said. As she left the council hall, Sarah activated her communicator to send a message back to Earth. It was time to tell humanity that they had chosen to stand alone against the dark. The evacuation ships began passing through human space 3 weeks after the Galactic Council meeting. They came in endless streams, massive Etherian energy vessels that looked like floating crystals. Caraxian battle fleets converted to carry civilians, even the cold geometric ships of the synthetics packed with refugees. Admiral Marcus Torres watched them pass from his command center on Luna Station. Each ship represented thousands, sometimes millions of beings fleeing their homes. He understood their fear. He also understood why humanity had chosen differently. Sir, called Lieutenant Rodriguez from her station, we're receiving another communication request from the Etherian flagship. Put them through, Torres said with a sigh. This would be the 15th species to try changing humanity's mind in the past week. The holographic display shimmered, revealing the flowing energy form of high Etherian lumina. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Admiral Torres, we must speak once more before we pass beyond your system. Of course, High Etherian. How can we help? We have traveled the galaxy for 8,000 years, Lumina said. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds. In all that time, we have learned one truth above all others. Torres waited patiently. Every species seemed to have ancient wisdom they wanted to share with humanity. Some enemies cannot be fought, Lumina continued. They can only be survived. The Devourers are such an enemy. They are not creatures or machines or even energy beings like ourselves. They are entropy given form. They are the universe's desire to return to empty darkness. With respect, High Etherian, we've heard similar warnings from others. But have you truly understood them? Lumina's form pulsed brighter. The Devourers do not simply kill. They unmake, Worlds they touch are not just destroyed, they cease to have ever existed. History rewrites itself around their passage. Torres felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying they can change the past? We are saying they can erase it entirely. The civilizations that faced them before, we no longer remember their names, their achievements, their art. It is as if they never were. The communication fell silent for a long moment. Torres stared at the readouts showing the approaching evacuation fleet. Hundreds of ships carrying the hopes and dreams of dozens of species, all running from an enemy that could erase those dreams from history itself. Why are you telling us this? He asked finally. Because you have chosen to stand where we cannot, Lumina replied, and because in all our ancient wisdom we cannot understand why. Torres smiled grimly. That's simple enough. It's because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. That cannot be the only reason. You're right, Torres admitted. It's also because someone has to try. Maybe you're right and the Devourers can't be stopped. Maybe they'll erase us so completely that no one will remember we existed, but at least we'll know we tried. Knowledge means nothing if there is no one left to possess it. Then let me ask you something, High Etherean. If the Devourers are truly unstoppable, if they really can unmake entire civilizations, then why are you running? Why not just accept the inevitable? Lumina's energy form flickered. Because we hope to preserve something, some fragment of what we are. Exactly, Torres said. You're hoping that running far enough, fast enough might save you. We're hoping that standing and fighting might save everyone else. Both choices come from the same place. Perhaps, Lumina said softly, but hope and foolishness often look identical. True. But so do wisdom and cowardice. The Etherean's form blazed for a moment, then dimmed. We wish you whatever small victory might be possible, Admiral Torres, and we wish you safe travels. High Etherean. The communication ended. Leaving Torres alone with his thoughts and the endless stream of fleeing ships, he turned to Lieutenant Rodriguez. Status report on our defensive preparations? All orbital platforms are being retrofitted with kinetic weapons, she replied. The mining operations in the asteroid belt have been converted to mass drivers. Every civilian ship larger than a shuttle is being equipped with improvised weapon systems. What about the Luna project? Rodriguez checked her display. Engineering teams are ahead of schedule. They say it's amazing how fast construction goes when no one cares about safety protocols anymore. Torres nodded. The Luna project was humanity's most desperate gambit, turning Earth's moon into a massive kinetic weapon. If conventional weapons failed, they could launch Luna itself at the enemy. It would destroy Earth's tides and probably kill millions, but it might hurt the Devourers. Sir, called Commander Park from the communications station, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Caraxian fleet. The evacuation fleet? No, sir, this is different. It's marked as a military frequency. Torres raised an eyebrow. Put it through. The display activated, showing the scarred face of General Vorth. The Caraxian warrior looked older than he had at the council meeting, as if the past weeks had aged him years. Admiral Torres, Vorth growled. I bring an offer from the Caraxian High Command. General Vorth, I thought your people were evacuating to the outer rim. Our civilians are, Vorth confirmed. But our warriors grow restless. We are bred for battle, not for running. Torres leaned forward. What kind of offer? 1,000 of our finest battle cruisers. 10,000 elite warriors. The newest weapons from our forge worlds. Vorth's eyes glowed with anticipation. We ask only to die alongside humans in glorious battle. The command center fell silent. Torres stared at the Caraxian general, hardly believing what he was hearing. General, your people have evacuation ships to protect, civilians who need your strength. Our civilians will be protected by others, Vorth replied. But Caraxian honor demands that we stand with those who choose to fight impossible battles. We have seen human courage in war. Now we would see it in our final war. The High Command approved this? Vorth's laugh was like distant thunder. The High Command ordered us to flee with the civilians. We chose to misunderstand those orders. Torres found himself grinning. And what happens when this is over and you have to explain your disobedience? If we win, they will call us heroes. If we lose, there will be no one left to punish us. Those are acceptable terms, Torres agreed. Welcome to humanity's last stand, General. It is our honor, Vorth replied formally. We will arrive in your system within 10 days. As the communication ended, Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from her station with wide eyes. Sir, we're receiving similar transmissions from 17 other species. The Zephyrians want to contribute their stealth fighters. The builders are offering to construct defensive installations. Even a group of synthetic units is requesting permission to join our forces. Torres stared at the tactical display showing the approaching refugee fleets. Hidden among the evacuation ships were warriors from across the galaxy, beings who had chosen to stand and fight rather than run and hide. Rodriguez, send a message to all human colonies and installations. Tell them we're not standing alone after all. Yes, sir. What should I tell them exactly? Torres looked out at the stars where somewhere in the darkness an enemy beyond imagination was approaching. But for the first time since the crisis began, he felt something other than grim determination. He felt hope. Tell them, he said slowly, that sometimes the most foolish decision is the one that inspires others to be foolish too, and tell them to get ready, because we're about to find out if a galaxy full of fools can stop the unstoppable. The first sign of the Devourers came from the Kepler Observatory, humanity's most distant early warning station. Dr. Sarah Kim was monitoring routine stellar observations when her instruments began showing impossible readings. That can't be right, she muttered, checking her equipment for the third time. According to the sensors, an entire star system was simply gone. Not destroyed, not collapsed into a black hole. Gone as if it had never existed. She sent an urgent message to Earth. Kepler Station to Sol Command. We have a problem. Within hours, every telescope and sensor array in human space was pointed toward the outer rim. What they found made seasoned astronomers question their sanity. Star systems were disappearing in a steady progression toward the galactic core. But the truly disturbing part was that space traffic computers were automatically updating their navigation charts, removing the missing systems. As if they had always been empty space. Admiral, Torres received the report while inspecting the defensive installations around Mars. The red planet had been transformed into a fortress, its moons bristling with weapons and its orbital space filled with mines and kinetic barriers. How many systems have we lost contact with? He asked his aide. 17 confirmed, Lieutenant Rodriguez replied. But sir, that's not the worst part. When we checked our historical databases, there's no record of those systems ever being inhabited. It's like they were always empty. Torres felt his blood run cold. The Etherian warnings had been accurate. The Devourers didn't just destroy, they erased. What about our observers? Do they still remember seeing those systems? Yes, sir. Dr. Kim and her team have clear memories of monitoring stellar activity in those regions. But according to all official records, they were watching empty space. Get me a direct line to the Caraxian fleet, Torres ordered. I want to know if they're experiencing the same thing. General Vorth's scarred face appeared on the communication screen minutes later. Behind him, Torres could see the busy bridge of a Caraxian battlecruiser. Admiral Torres, Vorth growled. We were about to contact you. Our navigation computers are malfunctioning. Let me guess, missing star systems? Exactly. But our warriors remember those systems clearly. It is as if reality itself is being rewritten. Torres nodded grimly. How long until they reach our outer defenses? Our calculations suggest 3 days, Vorth replied. We are positioning our fleet near the asteroid belt as discussed. My warriors are eager for battle. Remember, General, our primary goal is to slow them down and gather intelligence. We need to understand how they operate before we commit our main forces. Vorth's laugh was like grinding metal. Understood. We will die slowly and informatively. The next 2 days passed in frantic preparation. Every human colony worked around the clock to complete their defensive systems. The asteroid belt mining operations had been converted into a massive kinetic weapon network. Each asteroid was equipped with engines and guidance systems, ready to be hurled at the approaching enemy. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the frigate Defiance, one of 50 ships assigned to the outer perimeter. Her crew was a mix of humans and alien volunteers, Caraxian warriors, Zephyrian pilots, even a few synthetic units that had chosen to join the hopeless fight. Captain, called her Zephyrian navigator, sensors are detecting massive spatial distortions approaching from the rim. Show me, Vasquez ordered. The main display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of local space. At the edge of the sensor range, reality itself seemed to be rippling like water. As they watched, the distortions grew larger and more intense. Range to contact? Vasquez asked. Approximately 6 hours at current approach speed, the navigator replied. Captain, I'm reading some very strange energy signatures. They don't match anything in our databases. Vasquez activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are about to make first contact with the Devourers. Remember our mission. Observe, record, and transmit all data back to the main fleet. We're humanity's eyes and ears. Make every moment count. The 6 hours passed like 6 minutes. When the Devourers finally came into visual range, the bridge crew fell silent. They weren't ships in any conventional sense. They looked like living darkness given form, writhing masses of shadow and void that seemed to bend light around them. Some were small, the size of fighters. Others were vast, stretching for kilometers, my God, whispered the human helmsman. What are they? Our enemy, Vasquez replied firmly. All stations begin recording. Transmit everything back to Sol Command. The Devourers moved with purpose, flowing through space like a tide of darkness. They engulfed the outer asteroid settlements without slowing down. Where they passed, the asteroid simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but unmade, as if they had never been there. They're ignoring us, observed the Caraxian weapons officer. Should we attack? Not yet, Vasquez said. We need to see how they operate. They followed the Devourer swarm deeper into the system, recording everything. The enemy moved in patterns that defied physics, sometimes appearing to be in multiple locations simultaneously. When they encountered the first line of human defensive platforms, the weapons opened fire. Nuclear missiles, plasma beams, and kinetic projectiles struck the Devourers. Most attacks passed through them harmlessly, but a few seemed to cause damage. Some of the smaller entities flickered and faded. They can be hurt, Vasquez said with grim satisfaction. Note that kinetic weapons seem most effective. Energy weapons have limited impact. The Devourers responded to the attacks by accelerating. They swept through the defensive line like smoke through a screen door. Weapon platforms that had taken months to build were unmade in seconds. Captain, the communications officer called out, Admiral Torres is ordering all ships to fall back to the secondary defensive line. Acknowledged, Vasquez replied. But first we're going to get a closer look. She ordered the Defiance to approach one of the larger Devourer entities. As they drew near, the ship's sensors went mad. Reality seemed to bend around the creature, and several crew members reported feeling dizzy and disoriented. It's affecting our minds somehow, reported the ship's doctor. Brain scans show unusual neural activity. Can you compensate? Working on it. But Captain, I recommend we maintain distance. Prolonged exposure might have permanent effects. Vasquez was about to order a retreat when something unexpected happened. The Devourer entity they were observing suddenly turned toward them. For a moment that felt like eternity, the thing seemed to study the small human ship. Then it spoke, not through radio or any conventional communication method, but directly into their minds. Curious. You do not flee. The voice was like the sound of galaxies dying, cold and vast and alien. Several crew members collapsed, overwhelmed by the psychic contact. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earthship Defiance, she said aloud, hoping the creature could hear her. We're here to talk. Talk? The concept seemed to amuse the entity. We do not talk. We consume, we unmake. We return the universe to its proper state of emptiness. Why? Vasquez asked. Why do you want to destroy everything? Not destroy, correct. Your existence is an error. Life, thought, creation. These are aberrations in the natural order. We restore balance, but if everything is gone, what's the point of balance? The creature was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was something different in its voice. Uncertainty. You ask questions we have not considered. Most flee or fight without thought. You are different. That's what everyone tells us, Vasquez replied. We're the species that asks why when everyone else asks how fast can we run. Interesting. We will study you before we unmake you. The contact ended abruptly, leaving the bridge crew gasping and disoriented. Vasquez shook her head to clear it, then turned to her communications officer. Did we record all of that? Yes, Captain. Audio, video, and psychic resonance patterns. Good. Transmit everything to Sol Command immediately, then set course for the rally point. As the Defiance raced back toward the inner system, Vasquez reviewed what they had learned. The Devourers could be damaged by kinetic weapons. They could communicate telepathically, and most importantly, they weren't mindless destroyers. They had a philosophy, a reason for their actions. That meant they could be reasoned with. and if they could be reasoned with, they could potentially be defeated. Behind them, the swarm of devourers continued their relentless advance toward Earth. But for the first time since the crisis began, humanity had something more valuable than weapons or defenses. They had hope. The battle for the asteroid belt lasted 18 hours and changed everything humanity thought they knew about warfare. Admiral Torres watched from his command ship as waves of devourers flowed through their carefully prepared defenses like water through a net. Kinetic bombardment is having minimal effect, reported his tactical officer. The smaller entities are taking damage, but the larger ones barely seem to notice. Torres studied the tactical display. The devourers moved in patterns that defied military logic, sometimes clustering together, sometimes spreading thin across vast distances. But there was something else, a hesitation he hadn't seen in the earlier attacks. "Sir," called his communications officer, "General Vorth is requesting permission to initiate the Hellfire Protocol." Torres grimaced. The Hellfire Protocol was a desperate measure. Caraxian ships would overload their reactor cores while ramming devourer entities. It was effective, but it meant certain death for the crews involved. "Tell the general to wait for my signal," Torres replied. "I want to try something first." He opened a channel to Captain Vasquez, who was leading a squadron of fast attack ships. "Elena, I need you to try communicating with them again. Find out why they're moving more cautiously." "Understood, Admiral." "Moving to intercept." On the tactical display, Torres watched Vasquez's ship approach a cluster of medium-sized devourers. The entities noticed her approach but didn't attack immediately. "Admiral," Vasquez's voice came through the comm. "I'm establishing psychic contact." Moments later, her report came through. "Sir, you're not going to believe this. They're confused about something. The entity I spoke with said our resistance is unprecedented and illogical. They're trying to understand why we're not running." Torres felt a cold smile cross his face. "Are you saying we're confusing them?" "More than that, sir. I think we're actually disrupting their collective consciousness somehow. They keep asking why we choose to die rather than preserve ourselves." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That we're not choosing to die, we're choosing to fight. There's a difference." Torres understood immediately. The devourers had encountered countless civilizations, but all of them had either fled or been quickly overrun. They had never faced prolonged, deliberate resistance from beings who knew they were going to lose. "Elena, keep talking to them. Find out everything you can about how their minds work." "Already on it, Admiral." The battle continued around them, but Torres noticed the devourers were becoming increasingly erratic. Some groups would advance aggressively, then suddenly pull back. Others seemed to be fighting among themselves. "Sir," his science officer called out, "I'm detecting unusual psychic resonance patterns from the devourer formations. It's almost like they're having an argument." "About what?" "Unknown, but the resonance spikes correspond with our most effective attacks. Every time we destroy one of their entities, the psychic chatter increases." Torres began to see a pattern. "Rodriguez, pull up the tactical analysis of their movements since they entered our system." The display showed the devourer advance path over the past day. What Torres saw made him laugh out loud, a sound that shocked his bridge crew in the middle of a desperate battle. "Sir?" Lieutenant Rodriguez asked. "Look at their movement pattern," Torres said, pointing to the display. "They're not advancing efficiently anymore. They're taking detours, backtracking, sometimes even moving in circles." "What does that mean?" "It means," Torres said with growing excitement, "that we're driving them insane." He opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Torres. I want every captain to hear this. The Devourers are a hive mind that has spent millions of years consuming civilizations that either fled or died quickly. They don't understand us." He paused, watching as another human ship exploded under Devourer attack, its crew choosing to ram their destroyer into an enemy entity rather than be captured. "Every time we choose to fight instead of run, every time we sacrifice ourselves to hurt them, every time we refuse to give up, we're introducing chaos into their collective consciousness. They don't know how to process beings who choose death before defeat." The response from his captains was immediate and enthusiastic. Ship after ship began implementing increasingly desperate tactics. They rammed Devourer entities, rigged their ships to explode, and launched suicide attacks that defied all military logic. Captain Harrison of the destroyer Vendetta took his badly damaged ship directly into the largest Devourer entity, overloading his fusion reactor as he did. His final transmission was simple. For Earth and humanity's future. The explosion tore through the entity's center, and for the first time, one of the large devourers was visibly damaged. But more importantly, the psychic scream that emerged from the hive mind was heard by every human in the system. Admiral, Vasquez reported from her communication ship. The entity I've been talking to just said something strange. It asked me why humans sing death songs while dying. What did you tell it? I said we don't sing death songs. We sing victory songs. Even when we're losing, we're still winning something. Torres felt a surge of pride in his species. Humanity had always been stubborn, but this was something more. This was their nature distilled to its purest form. The absolute refusal to accept defeat, even in the face of annihilation. General Vorth, he called to the Caraxian commander, initiate the Hellfire Protocol. All ships, all weapons, everything we have. Let's show these creatures what happens when they try to unmake beings who were born fighting. The next few hours became known in human history as the Battle of Spite. Every ship, every weapon platform, every mining station turned into a weapon of vengeance. The Caraxians launched their suicide runs with songs of glory on their lips. The Zephyrians used their stealth capabilities to plant nuclear mines inside devourer entities. Even the synthetics abandoned their logical programming and threw themselves into impossible attacks. But it was humanity that led the charge into madness. They rigged cargo ships to explode, turned civilian transports into kinetic weapons, and sent mining robots on kamikaze missions. When conventional weapons failed, they used unconventional ones. When those failed, they improvised. Dr. Sarah Kim, still stationed at the distant Kepler Observatory, watched the battle through her telescopes and had an idea that was either brilliant or insane. She began broadcasting human music toward the key, devourer fleet, everything from classical symphonies to death metal to children's lullabies. If we're disrupting their collective consciousness, she reasoned in her transmission to Torres, maybe we can overload it completely. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The devourers began moving erratically, their formations breaking apart as different entities reacted differently to the chaotic inputs of human emotion and creativity. Torres watched in amazement as the enemy fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just hours before, began to fragment and lose coherence. Some entities retreated toward the outer system. Others spun in place as if confused. A few actually began attacking each other. Elena, he called to Vasquez. Are you still in contact with them? Barely, sir. The entity I was talking to is, I think the word is panicking. It keeps asking why humans create beauty while facing extinction. It doesn't understand art or music or sacrifice for others. And what are you telling it? I'm telling it the truth, that these things are what make us human, that we'd rather die as ourselves than live as something else. Torres looked around his bridge at his crew. Every face showed the same expression, grim determination mixed with fierce joy. They were going to lose this battle. Earth was still doomed, but they had done something unprecedented. They had made the unstoppable enemy stop and think. All ships, Torres announced, prepare for Phase 2. We're falling back to Earth orbit for the final defense. But remember what we've accomplished here. We've proven that the Devourers aren't gods. They're just another enemy that bleeds when we hit them hard enough. As the human fleet retreated toward Earth, they left behind a field of wreckage and an enemy that was no longer united in purpose. The Devourers followed, but slowly, cautiously, like predators that had suddenly realized their prey had fangs. The real battle was just beginning. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel surrounded by fire. The final defensive line stretched from Luna to the outer reaches of Earth's gravity well. Every available ship and weapon platform forming humanity's last stand. Admiral Torres looked down at his homeworld and felt a strange peace settle over him. Sir, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, the Devourer fleet is approaching. Estimated contact in 4 hours, Torres nodded. Status on the Luna project? Ready for launch, sir.
Engineering reports that all charges are in place.
When we detonate, it will send Earth's moon directly into their main formation. And the evacuation? Completed 2 hours ago. Every human not involved in the defense has been moved to the underground shelters on the far side of the planet. Torres smiled grimly. Even in their final hours, humanity was trying to save lives. What about our allies? General Vorth reports his remaining ships are in position. The Zephyrian stealth fighters are deployed throughout the asteroid field. The synthetics have volunteered for close-range combat missions. The past week had seen reinforcements arrive from across the galaxy. Not the major evacuating fleets, but smaller groups. Individual ships, volunteer crews, warriors who had chosen honor over survival. They came from dozens of species, but they all shared one common trait. They refused to run. Admiral, called his communications officer, Captain Vasquez is requesting permission to attempt one final communication with the Devourers. Granted. Put her through. Vasquez's face appeared on the screen. Behind her, Torres could see the bridge of her ship, now staffed entirely by volunteers from 7 different species. Admiral, I've been in contact with what I think is their central consciousness. It's different now, fragmented. I think our resistance has caused some kind of philosophical crisis in their collective mind. Explain. They've spent millions of years believing that all life seeks only to preserve itself, that when faced with extinction, all beings will choose survival over principle. We've proven them wrong, and it's tearing their unity apart. Torres leaned forward. Can we use that somehow? I think so, sir. But it requires a sacrifice that goes beyond anything we've attempted so far. Before Torres could ask what she meant, alarm klaxons began sounding throughout the fleet. The Devourers had arrived. They came like a tide of darkness, flowing around Earth in formations that hurt to look at directly. But Torres noticed immediately that they were different from before. Their movements were hesitant, uncertain. Some groups moved in one direction while others went elsewhere. The perfect unity of their earlier attacks was gone. All ships, Torres announced over the fleet communication system. This is it. Everything we've worked for, everything we've sacrificed comes down to the next few hours. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for the idea that some things are worth dying for. The battle began when the Devourers reached Luna's orbit. The moon-based defensive platforms opened fire with every weapon humanity had ever devised. Nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, kinetic projectiles, and experimental energy weapons lit up the space between Earth and its satellite. Some Devourer entities were destroyed, their forms dissolving into nothingness. But others passed through the attacks unharmed, their alien nature making them immune to conventional weapons. Launching Luna, Torres commanded. The charges placed throughout Earth's moon detonated simultaneously, sending the entire satellite hurtling toward the largest cluster of Devourer entities. The impact was visible from Earth's surface, a flash of light that briefly outshone the sun. When the light faded, a significant portion of the Devourer fleet was simply gone. But the survivors pressed on, their rage now evident in their chaotic movements. Sir, Rodriguez called out, Captain Vasquez is moving her ship toward the enemy formation. She's not responding to communication requests. Torres watched in horror as Vasquez's ship, the Defiance, accelerated directly toward what appeared to be the Devourer command entity. Elena, what are you doing? Her voice came through the static-filled communication channel. Admiral, I know how to stop them, but I need to get close enough to make direct mental contact with their collective consciousness. That's suicide. The psychic exposure will kill you. Maybe, Vasquez replied calmly. But I think I understand something about them that we've missed. They're not just a hive mind. They're a traumatized one. Before Torres could respond, Vasquez's ship disappeared into the writhing mass of the largest Devourer entity. For several minutes there was silence. Then suddenly every human in the system heard her voice. Not through their communicators, but directly in their minds. Listen to me, her voice echoed across space. All of you, every human who can hear this. I'm inside their collective consciousness, and I can see what they really are. Torres felt the psychic contact like ice water in his veins. Around him, his crew members gasped as Vasquez's thoughts reached them. They're not destroyers by choice. They're running from something, from the pain of existence itself. Millions of years ago, they were like us. They loved, they created, they hoped. But something happened to them. Something so terrible that they decided existence itself was wrong. The battle continued around them. But Torres found himself transfixed by Vasquez's revelation. They consume civilizations because they can't bear to see others experience the joy they've lost. They erase histories because remembering hurts too much. They're not evil, they're broken. Elena, Torres whispered, what are you doing? What humans do best, Admiral. I'm being stubborn. I'm refusing to let them give up. Across the solar system, every human felt it. A surge of pure, defiant hope flowing through the psychic connection. Vasquez was somehow projecting human emotions directly into the devourer collective consciousness. She showed them memories of Earth, children playing in parks, lovers watching sunsets, scientists making discoveries that benefited all humanity. She shared the music Dr. Kim had broadcast, the art hanging in museums, the stories passed down through generations. This is why we fight. Her voice echoed, not because we're not afraid, but because some things are more important than fear. Love is more important than safety. Hope is more important than survival. Beauty is more important than existence itself. The effect on the devourers was immediate and catastrophic. Their formations broke apart as individual entities began to remember what they had lost. Some collapsed in on themselves, overwhelmed by sudden emotion. Others simply stopped moving, paralyzed by the return of feelings they had suppressed for eons. But it was killing Vasquez. Torres could feel her life force fading as she burned herself out maintaining the psychic connection. Elena, get out of there. Can't stop now, Admiral. They need to remember. They need to choose. Her final transmission came not in words but in images. The devourer entities slowly, painfully remembering their own lost civilizations. Remembering love and art and music they had created before the great trauma that had broken them. Remembering that existence, despite its pain, was precious. One by one, the devourer entities began to change. Their forms became less chaotic, more structured. Some began to glow with soft light instead of radiating darkness. They were choosing to remember, choosing to feel, choosing to live again despite the pain. The last thing Torres felt from Vasquez was a sense of incredible joy and satisfaction. She had done what no weapon could accomplish. She had reminded the devourers of what they used to be. When the psychic connection ended, the solar system fell silent. The devourer fleet hung motionless in space, no longer a unified force of destruction, but a collection of individuals struggling with newly awakened emotions. Then, slowly, they began to leave. Not fleeing in panic, but departing with something that might have been dignity. They had work to do, other devourer fleets to find, other fragments of their broken civilization to heal. As the last of them disappeared into deep space, Torres received a final communication. Not from Vasquez, she was gone, but from the devourer entity she had sacrificed herself to save. "Thank you," the voice whispered in his mind. "We had forgotten that existence without hope is not existence at all. We will remember." 3 months later, the evacuated species began returning to the galaxy. They found a changed universe. Not because the devourers had been destroyed, but because they had been healed. Some had chosen to rebuild their ancient civilizations. Others had decided to explore the outer galaxies, seeking new purposes for their existence. Earth was scarred but intact. Luna was gone, leaving strange tides and a night sky that would take generations to get used to. But humanity had survived, and more importantly, they had remained human. In the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers, a new memorial stood where the old meeting hall had been. It bore the names of every being who had chosen to stand and fight, with one inscription at the center. When every species fled, some stood their ground. When facing the unstoppable, they chose to be immovable. When offered survival, they chose hope instead. And in small letters at the bottom, almost as an afterthought. Because sometimes the most important victory is reminding the universe that some things are worth fighting for. The memorial was signed by representatives of every known species, but the final signature was different. It was written in script that seemed to shift and change as you looked at it, and it simply said, "The Thankful."